Good afternoon, friends. It is a blustery day here in Pittsburgh. Very windy time out there, and I'm happy to be safe and warm and inside sharing a story with you. Today's story is a new one to me, but I really like it. My granddaughters Lucia and Violet let me borrow it from their house. It's called This Moose Belongs to Me, and it has some wonderful drawings in it and a pretty good meaning too. Listen to the story. This Moose Belongs to Me by Oliver Jeffers. Wilfred owned a moose. He hadn't always owned a moose. The moose came to him a while ago, and he just knew that this was meant to be his. He would call the moose Marcel. He began following Marcel, explaining the rules of how to be a good pet. Most of the time, it seemed as though the moose wasn't listening, but Wilfred knew he was. Mostly because he followed rule number 4 very well. Rule number 4 is not making too much noise while Wilfred plays his record collection. Sometimes the moose wasn't a very good pet. He generally ignored rule number 7, going which way Wilfred wants to go. The moose had a very good sense of direction, and Wilfred did not. And because the moose was particularly poor on Rule 7, subsection B, maintaining a certain proximity to home, Wilfred quickly learned to bring some string along on their outings so he could find his way back again. And there's Wilfred with his ball of string. Sometimes the moose was an excellent pet. He had no trouble with Rule 11, providing shelter from the rain. Or Rule 16, knocking down things that are out of Wilfred's reach. Wilfred says, "Good work." One day, as Wilfred discussed their plans for the coming year on a particularly long walk, he made a terrible discovery. Now, I want you to look at what Wilfred's plans are. Look at what his plans are. He's thinking that he and the moose are going to go over the waterfall in a barrel. What was the discovery? Someone else thought that she owned the moose. Wilfred was dumbstruck. The moose was Marcel. But this lady says, "Rodrigo, you're back." The old lady was mistaken, and Wilfred thought it was only proper to correct her. "This moose belongs to me," he explained. And to prove it, he called Marcel. "Heel," he said. But the moose did not respond. He seemed more interested in the old lady. She says, "Good, Rodrigo." Embarrassed and enraged, Wilfred rushed off for home. He said, "Fine." But in his haste, and miles from anywhere, he tripped over his string and got all tangled up. And there he lay. Wilfred was beginning to get a little bit worried. It was getting late, and the monsters would be out soon. He had just ruled out the last of his options. There's Wilfred, and he's trying to figure out what could happen. Would a penguin come and save him? Or did he have a saw? Or a swordfish? Maybe he would have a Smokey Bear, or none of these ideas would work. He had just ruled out the last of his options when along came the moose and performed Rule 73 brilliantly, rescuing your owner from perilous situations. Look at what the moose is doing. All was forgiven. And perhaps, Wilfred admitted, he had never really owned the moose anyway. With that in mind, he and the moose reached a compromise. The moose would agree to all of Wilfred's rules whenever it suited him. There they are. That's the end. And then the moose shows up to another person, and the other person says, "Dominic, you're back, and you brought me an apple." Each of those three people thought that the moose belonged to him or to her. But who did the moose belong to? None of them. The moose was his own self. Sometimes what we think ought to be true isn't always true just because we want it to be true. We work together to learn and to live and to share. I hope you have somebody who makes you feel special today, somebody that you can belong to, and somebody you can tell stories with. I'll see you tomorrow with another story. Goodbye.